Valda Coryat, Vice President, North America Marketing for Condiments and Sauces at McCormick.
Matthew Lubeck, General Manager of EMEA for Amperity. Great.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Valda, thank you so much for having this conversation today. I'm super excited to get into your background and to talk more about personalization. Sort of you and I were chatting before sort of coming here, and one of the things that we talked a lot about where I almost think that you have a really balanced, kind of fresh point of view, is that I think we're living in a world where, especially with AI, with tech, with data, where it's all about sort of more and almost letting machines take over the world of marketing.
Yeah.
And I think you have a really fresh perspective on the role of brand and the role of humanity, sort of at the center of what it means to certainly leverage that ecosystem, but really to take control. And so I want to talk about that and sort of talk about sort of two things. One is the role of personalization in the way you lead McCormick and your work there. And I think there's sort of two things about you that hopefully we can unpack. One is that you've shared a lot, that you have a personal backstory that really lives and breathes inside of your practice. You're from the Caribbean, and so we'll talk about that.
Yes.
But you're also a P&L owner. And so I think we're going to talk about your vision, but really pragmatically how that ties into the way that you run a business. Mm-hmm. And so let's jump in.
Sure.
I think maybe my first question for you is, at McCormick, tell me, what does it mean for you to know your customer?
So to know our customer at McCormick, it starts with what are their lives like, right? Because, COVID, for example, really upended the world, right? It was a global pandemic. And during that time, what we realized was, wow, people are actually at home more, right? Probably using more product because they're cooking at home more, and that's continued to today. But importantly, during that time, we also realized that despite all of the digital, devices and things that we had, we could certainly do work remotely. We felt a loss of that human touch, right? And really connecting on a level as humans, and that actually comes out, I think, when you see the work that we do. Food is community, right? Food builds community, I would say. And so that humanity is so central to what McCormick, I think, weaves through a lot of our marketing, as we balance, of course, keeping up with all of the digital advances that are surrounding us, yes.
When we think about the world of personalization,
Yeah.
there's sort of this tension.
Yes.
This tension between sort of letting the machines take over and letting the tech and the data tell us what to do.
That's right, okay.
Create the content, create the experience.
Yeah.
And the sort of human-led perspective on that. And I think you take
Absolutely.
French's as an example. Mm-hmm. You could really accidentally end up doing something to that beautiful brand that really commoditizes it.
That's right. Yeah. It's about more. Yeah, it's about more than just mustard flavor,
right?
There are memories that are tied to mustard, from picnics with your family or a loved one, happiness and joy, right? Maybe some people, for example, those who have been with the brand longer, go back to a time that was very safe, right? Decades ago, when kids used to play outside all day and maybe only come in for lunch or dinner, and their parents didn't know where they were. They weren't tracking them on cell phones, right? The use of mustard on a hot dog also is so synonymous with summer, right? And everyone thinks about not having school and the joy of summer, right? And the freedom that really gave you as a kid to go out and enjoy. And it's the color of sunshine. Yeah, so really interesting. Instead of thinking about, okay, so, maybe it skews older, right, an older demographic, and we want to sell more, so it's only about price. It's never only about price. Price is absolutely a factor, but if you're not careful, you might play to, sort of what's near term and would deliver the most value for you in the short term versus longer term growth.
Yeah, that really resonates. Yeah, and sort of. So you have this vision around the brand and what the brand story can look like, but then of course personalization is all about reaching people in the right way. and I'm sure you have a core consumer, and then we've got new generations of consumers that are coming along, and
Yeah.
the way that they see the world and the way that they consume has changed. Like,
Absolutely.
How do you translate
Yeah.
that vision then into a personalized experience that meets people where they are?
Yeah, so we do that in two ways. We do that from an innovation standpoint, right? So on the one hand, we've got our workhorse, Frank's Original, Frank's Buffalo sauce, and obviously that's a staple. Everyone knows it. We don't want you to take it for granted, right? Because it's still special. But we also know, hey, you know what? There are flavors like sriracha. Did people know that Frank's has a sriracha? Hot honey that people are putting on pizza, right? So there is the customization and personalization of flavor, but then also how do we inform or show up in unexpected ways for that Gen Z, that Gen Alpha, who maybe is really interested in flavor variety and may not want to stick to just that one traditional tried and true buffalo. Well, if we innovate and have the products, we also need to let people know that we have it. But guess what? I think there's also this thing called TikTok, right? Where we're kind of watching and learning, and people are doing really interesting things and adding it to products and things in ways that maybe we would never have thought about in our offices, right? So the customization comes with really knowing our audience, knowing kind of where they engage from a media standpoint, and also in real life.
I love that. There's something sort of like deeply intimate about the way that you're, and I think we're sort of just peeling the onion here about how you really get to understand and know the customer and connect with them where they are. Maybe tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're from the Caribbean.
Oh my gosh, yeah. How perfect is it that we are here by the water having an interview? I'm very floral tropical today, right? But yeah, being born in the Caribbean, it was so freeing, right? And one of the things, it's Juneteenth, and freedom is really at the center of what Juneteenth means. And I remember, although Juneteenth is not in the Caribbean, feeling very free when I was there, right? And free in a way of moving about comfortably. It wasn't just about safety, but it was interacting with people, and almost like a boldness about, as a child, by the way, of having conversations and building community. And I didn't even know that I was doing it, right? And I fast forward to life now in the United States, and I love that origin, my origin, because it allows me to tap into all parts of the world, honestly, because that's how I grew up, all flavors. I love curry as much as I do barbecue, let's say, in terms of the sauce category, and absolutely love hot sauce or pepper sauce. For all who are watching who are native to the Caribbean would probably take away some of my Caribbean credibility if I didn't say pepper sauce. But it informs everything about me, because I think variety is one of those things that is the spice of life, and you don't have to necessarily travel and get on a flight to enjoy the world.
Yeah, that's super inspiring, and it's funny because you bring me back to my childhood memories too in a way that I think really resonates. I grew up in the Midwest, so when you talk barbecue sauces, when you talk sort of being in the backyard and just being free to run around the neighborhood and go in and out of people's houses to barbecues and have a hot dog and put mustard on, it brings something deeply emotional up about like remembering childhood and remembering these sort of young, like innocent moments that I think even as adult consumers can really resonate.
And flavor is so important to all of this. I don't know how many people realize this, but McCormick is actually a global flavor company. So yes, we started in spices about 135 years ago, but the brands that I work on are the recently acquired brands of hot sauce, right? So Frank's and Cholula being the main ones that people would know. French's mustard, barbecue sauce, marinades. And really, across the entire business, we not only have the products that you would see at retail, but McCormick actually flavors a lot in the food and beverage industry, including performance nutrition. So a lot of folks don't know that, right? We've got our consumer products division, we've got our flavor solutions unit, who works really fast, right? So I talked earlier about agility and bringing an entrepreneurial mindset into the company from my own personal work experience. But we've got teams of people that are using that as a competitive advantage in both of our major divisions.
It's super interesting. So I want to transition us then to sort of we've gone from the vision of what it can look like to sort of put humanity at the center
Yes.
of personalization. Let's talk about bringing it to life. You know, Amperity is a technology platform that helps big brands pull together all of the things that we should know about our customer and the data that lives everywhere, and bring it together to make it easier to know our customer, activate, measure, rinse and repeat. So that's my shameless plug.
Yeah. Go for it.
And so I think the interesting question then is, let's talk about how you in your world go from this sort of vision to the new modern sort of digital ecosystem and marketing ecosystem. Like, how do you as a leader bring this to life pragmatically to really drive the business?
Yeah, so I mean, I was formally educated, right? So I don't want any of my professors in undergrad or grad school to watch this and say, Valda, you know, like numbers. How about the numbers? So we have a lot of data, but I think it's how do you interpret the data? And so we've got data that is certainly retrospective and may show trends, right, as we're looking forward in terms of consumer insights and extracting that. But then there's also just, you know, I would say thinking about, again, bringing humanity to the center, households, right? So when there's a household, there's both a shopper and a consumer. Sometimes they're one and the same, sometimes they're not, right? So that younger, if you're a Gen X household, head of household, and you have Gen Z children, for example, you know what, your buying patterns probably change. And how do we know if that household is actually going to, how do we know what the design of that household is like, and how do we tap in and ensure that we're adding value to their lives? And the data very much informs that, and I think that's actually at the core of what we're trying to figure out. It's both left and right brain, right? Using numbers, certainly, but then, you know, you also are sitting at a restaurant and you may overhear a conversation of a family. Again, I'm totally a brand geek, so I go out and I actually am looking at, you know, what brand of ketchup or hot sauce do they have at the establishment. You know, if you're my husband, you ask for, you know, Frank's or Cholula, for example. But again, you know, it's one of those things where the customization is actually, I think in one way, it's getting, as advanced as we're getting with tools, it's actually becoming more complex. Because you have to figure out, of all of that data, of all of those, you know, things that are coming in, how do I make sense of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you, maybe you can unpack a campaign or two where I think you've distilled all of the insights that you've seen out there into sort of a new way of reaching consumers. Maybe if you want to talk about a couple of examples.
I'll give you one that was last year, and I believe it won an award last year as well, but I'll fast forward to this year, right? We have both, for example, your core established, you know, Frank's Original and Frank's Buffalo. Well, who better than Jason Kelce, who personifies what we would say is the Frank's brand, right? So it was amazing to have him with this Super Bowl activation in 2024. But back in 2023, we also looked at, wait a second, you know what? Around the time of football season, you know, we also saw a tie with gamers, right? So we had a Fortnite activation. And with that, though, the magic of that activation wasn't just that, you know, when people are gaming for hours, they're hungry, but you also ensure that we had a tie with DoorDash, right, and TGI Fridays. So they were served, you know, Frank's flavored wings, you know, during that time as well. So there's a way for us to flex, I think, both to support our base business, being Original and Buffalo, with a celebrity and spokesperson that was really, you know, of the moment, right? I would say that timing of that Jason Kelce campaign was brilliant. But last year, you know what? We did something that may not have been seen by everyone, but actually reached a cohort of consumers that we really cared about. And again, in their natural setting, you know, as their humanity very much is tied to gaming, for example.
That's so interesting. I mean, you phase me as such a creative visionary, and like listening to the story, it's easy to say, oh, that's great, that makes so much sense, but you have to come up with these ideas and have enough gut and sort of conviction to go forward with them. And I'm sure you then of course have to measure and demonstrate performance.
The agencies though, yeah.
And how do you teach your teams to grow as leaders as well, to have that same kind of gut and conviction?
Well, that's where I tap into really my entrepreneurial beginnings, right? In terms of my family, we've got. I tell people my family has seen, great wealth and great poverty all in one, right? In a couple of generations. I respect Mother Nature. I see how lovely it is behind us, but hurricanes and volcano eruptions have really disrupted things. My grandfather actually owned a business that was tied to agriculture, but he died when my mom and her siblings were really, really young. So I mentioned that because it's like, okay, Valda, what does this personal story have to do with brands and so forth? But there's a responsibility that we have, I feel, this is Valda's perspective, to the next generation, right? Not only in terms of what we teach them as they come up as marketers, the practical skills, but the values that we're passing on and how we inspire them. And so my leadership absolutely comes from a place of, you know what, you're not always going to be here. You may not always be in this space of privilege, but what are the things that are timeless, right, that you want to ensure continue on generation after generation, for my own kids, for example. So my team back, at McCormick, I've tried to be that inspiration and to give them the room to use things from their gut at the same time, right, that they're doing the traditional, right, reading our market share, reading the latest consumer insights report, and then I say, okay, got it. What are the learnings? What are the actions that we're going to do? Pricing, all of the 4 Ps, all of that. Put it to the side. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the decisions that you're recommending? And from that, I think we get to some really rich conversations, because sometimes young people aim to please, right? And they may not say what is probably the most enlightening thing for the business, which is the truth. And so I've given them that license to really speak truth from their lives when they're out hanging with, their friends and significant others or whatever. To bring that into the office. And I'll give you a fun one. We actually had an activity where they did a Gen Z terms quiz. And I actually scored really well. Why? Because I have 3 Gen Z children. But, it's just one of those things where if we're going to, have creative, right? What language are you going to use? Is it going to resonate with Gen Z? Or not? So, it's just fun. I mean, I absolutely, I love brand. I've done it for, over 2 decades, right? And I have moved around, or shape-shifted, as I tell people. I'm a shapeshifter, between industries and business models, and from established to entrepreneurial startup, everything from mangoes to cannabis, now to food and bev. In just having fun and enjoying the challenge.
Yeah, I love that. There's sort of 2 sides to it. You're describing leaving a legacy and thinking about the world that you want to sort of leave behind you.
Yeah.
That's bigger than any one campaign, or
right.
bigger than a plus 5%,
Yeah.
plus 100%.
Yeah.
And then also to have fun while you're doing it. It's funny because we live I live more on the tech and the sort of ecosystem side now.
Yeah.
I've been at brand. I've sort of moved between both, and it's the same thing. Like, I think the tech industry sometimes can get a bad reputation for wanting to just move fast, break things, make everything easier, and then there's these unintended consequences that come from that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot about, in the company we've built, and beyond even one company, in the world of customer data, how do we protect consumer preferences and privacy more?
Right.
How do we give people transparency into the ways that we're connecting with them, and give them more control, and hopefully give consumers enough value that as we evolve and the world digitizes and AI gets brought into that space, actually customers are excited by the ways that we're evolving and how we connect with them. And I think there's a risk that we as an industry do that really well. I think there's a risk that we do it in a way that can be really invasive, and I think we have to fight for that.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? As we're talking about this, I think about Steve Jobs, right? If he were here today, I wonder what his thoughts and opinions would be on things. Honestly, I mean, the iPhone, right? Digital, or mobile rather, really changed our world. And it's just one of those things that I don't know if what he created, right, his company, is it what it unleashed, right? Is this what he had envisioned? Is this the world that he had envisioned? It's a big question. These are the things as a brand person and an innovation person that I actually sit and think about. And I am absolutely loving Con. Like, this is my playground. It's my first time here, but I have learned so much. Certainly there's a lot of talk on AI, right, and all technology. But for me, at the essence of what I'm doing is really steeped in humanity. And I think the how of doing things really matters. I think the messaging, the values that we're imparting have an effect. And so that's my responsibility in all of this. And I want people to have fun too. I was like, let's have some fun.
I love that. I mean, I think that, thank you for the insights that I think you've shared with everyone here. I think we've heard from you, one, personalization works. There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
It's elastic. It can slide between the world of the data and the tech and the ecosystem with our agencies, but there's a human role to put at the center of it. And hopefully it's a lot of fun to be working in this space, which is, I think, what we're getting from you.
It absolutely is. And, I also, if anyone comes to Baltimore, right, I encourage you to reach out to me and visit our Hunt Valley Global headquarters, because there's always something cooking in the kitchen. And we're always sharing flavor, right, with all of our visitors. And so it's one of those things that, flavor, building community, imparting some sort of brand memory so that people are talking about it, right? Not only tomorrow and next week, but for years to come, things that are lasting, is an incredible legacy, I think, that the entire industry is really a part of, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do that work at McCormick.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I can't wait to join you in Baltimore for a meal.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.